Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 1990 Mazda Savanna RX-7. Now this is part of the second generation, dubbed the FC, which was produced between 1985 and 1992. Although this is not only the S5 version, made between 1989 and 1992, succeeding the S4 version of this car, but this is also the Japanese version, and as in Japan it was only made under the Savanna RX-7 name. But in the US, for instance, it was only known as the RX-7, and unlike its previous generation, this has independent rear suspension, rack and pinion steering, and disc brakes as standard. Also has passive rear steering and auto adjusting suspension, which adjusts the suspension according to road conditions. And yeah, even though this is the Japanese version, it was a car made for the US market, as not only has it been restyled over the previous generation to look rather like a 944 or a 924, but also it's a far cheaper version of that kind of car, really. As it's a coupe, it's got a hatch, it's got a long bonnet, short rear end. It is practically a 944 in a lot of ways, but this has elements going for it that the 944 doesn't. It doesn't weigh all that much at 2,981 pounds, which is a couple £100 less than the 944, although that is £406 more than the prior generation. But the big difference is obviously the engine. Now it shares the same basic engine as the previous generation, as it is once again a 1.3 litre 2-rotor Wankel rotary engine, but now it has a turbocharger on top of that, so it now has 200 horsepower and 196 pounds-feet of torque, which is 75 extra horsepower over the previous 65 horsepower, sorry, over the previous car, while also having 63 pounds-feet of torque extra as well. So yeah, fair bit of extra power despite the extra weight, but despite having that extra weight, this is actually faster in terms of acceleration and top speed over the previous generation, and because of the additional engineering underpinnings to make it better in terms of handling and braking, this is also a far better car in terms of handling. Though practicality wise it is practically the same, as you can see, as the boot is pretty much the same size, also has a hatch just like the previous generation, but interior wise it is a little bit more up to date, as you'd expect for a newer car, as you can see, but it's still thoroughly an 80s car in a lot of ways. You're not going to see any real modern technology on the inside, but yeah, the technology on the underneath is really what that sets this apart from the previous generation. And yeah, the engine also helps set it apart from the Porsche as well, because these Wankel rotary engines are more economical, they're higher revving, and yeah, the generally are lighter as well, so that's one reason why this is probably a lighter car than that Porsche. And yeah, being aimed at the US market, this sold by the truckload. In 1986 alone, this sold 86,000, whereas the Porsche 944 over the course of about 7 years only sold about 56,000 in the US. So yeah, this sold way more than that Porsche 944 in just 1 year. It sold around 270,000 worldwide overall, so an extremely successful car. But nonetheless, let's get out onto the open road and see what this car can do. So yeah, there's more similarities to this alongside the 944. Obviously it's turbocharged, they're both rear wheel drive. They're both not really meant to be a everyday kind of car to drive, but they obviously can be used that way. And yeah, they're both really rather quite quick. Though I'm not going to say this is as quick as a 944, because it just isn't. But yeah, it's still far from a slow car. But I'll just let you listen to the engine for a little bit first, and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, it's your typical Wankel rotary engine kind of sound, high revving, as you can see, up to 7,000 RPM, and quite noisy. I'm not personally a fan of the way Wankel rotary engines sound, but this is probably one of the more, audio-friendly kind of engines from Mazda, for instance. So yeah, I'm on the whole generally fine with it, and I think the turbocharger in a way helps, nullify some of the engine noise, which is fine. Acceleration wise though, this can do 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, 0 to 100 in 17.3 seconds, and going to a top speed of 156 miles an hour. Now that isn't quite as quick as the 944, as it can do 0 to 60 a second quicker than that. It can do 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds quicker than that, and it will crack 160 miles an hour. But it is far faster than the prior generation, as that could only do 0 to 60 in 8.8 seconds, 0 to 125 seconds, and it could only do 131 miles an hour. Now I can see why some people might prefer the previous generation to this, as styling wise it is a little bit more unique, and yeah, it doesn't weigh anywhere near as much as this. Like I said, it weighs 406 pounds less than this, so if you're after a lighter, you know, more raw experience, then yeah, get the previous generation. But this has so much more technology going on underneath that it's just a really superb handling car. It's far faster, and yeah, I imagine it will be far more usable on a day-to-day basis, especially since with that turbocharger and obviously being a small engine, it's going to be quite an economical car as well. Handling wise though, it is really great. It's easily one of the best cars of its time. It feels a lot better than the 944 as far as I'm concerned, in some way because it's lighter, but also because it feels a lot more agile, because it's got very little weight up front as well, because of that small lightweight Wankel rotary engine, so you can really just slide it around or be really rather serious with it when it comes to driving it. But either way, it's fun, it's quick, and yeah, it's an easy car to get used to when it comes to driving it quick. And yeah, I know the 944 is well revered and I do quite like that car, but this on the whole is just a little bit more interesting, primarily because of that Wankel rotary engine, even though, like I said, I'm not a massive fan of the way it sounds, but I have heard far worse Wankel rotary engines out there, and yeah, this at the end of the day has style and handling and lack of weight, and plenty of acceleration on the go as well to really rather make up for it. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.